welcome back again to my channel. In today's video we'll be learning how to make this blouse with extended rectangular peplum. The inspiration is on the left side of the screen while my recreation is on the right side of the screen. This tutorial is beginners friendly, very quick to make. If this is what you want to learn, then let's get to the video. I made use of 2 years of this pattern crepe, and this particular fabric I'm using is not the ideal fabric to use to recreate this blouse, but this is what is available to me. I'm going to be drafting this on a paper first so that you guys can see the markings. Okay, from the top of my paper I'm going to come down to my bust point, which is 9.5 inches, and then I'm also going to mark my waistline, which is also the half length, 16 inches, but then I'm going to be adding an allowance of 1.5 inches to it. Half inch is going to be for joining the shoulder, and then 1 inch for joining the peplum later. I'm just going to mark this at multiple places so I can have a straight line. Then I will go in with my ruler to connect all the points together like so. The next thing is to come to the top of my paper, and then I'm going to be marking half of my shoulder measurement, which is 14 inches for me. Half of that is 7 inches, so I marked 7 inches. And because this blouse has a cut together sleeve, so I'm going to be marking my sleeve length. I'm using a sleeve length of 6 inches. Okay, so from that 7 inches mark, which is half of my shoulder measurement, I marked another 6 inches plus extra 1 inch for folding allowance. And on that 6 inches mark, the new mark, I came down by 1.5 inches for the shoulder slope. I also marked 3 inches for my neck width, and from that neck width I'm going to be connecting a slant line all the way to the shoulder slope as I'm demonstrating on the screen. Next, I came down by 3 inches for my neck depth. Okay, you can use 3.5 inches or 4 inches. This totally depends on how low you want your neckline to be. Okay, then I went in with my curved ruler to connect from my neck depth to my neck width. So the next thing I'm going to be doing now is to come down to my bust point, and then I'm going to be marking quarter of my bust circumference, which means my bust circumference divided by 4. My bust circumference is 35, and I divided that by 4, and I marked it on my bust line plus 1 inch for stitching allowance. On the waistline, which is the half length, I marked quarter of my waist circumference plus 1 inch for that, and also 1 inch for stitching allowance. Connected the 2 points together like I'm demonstrating on the screen. So the next thing I did was to extend my bust point line. Okay, we're about to mark the sleeve. All right, so I'm using this my bust point as my sleeve length. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to be doing now is to measure what I have at the top of my paper. So whatever I have there, I'm going to also mark it on my bust point line like so. Measuring that, I had 14 inches, so I'm also going to mark that same 14 inches on my bust point line, and then I'm going to connect the 2 points together with a straight ruler, just like I'm showing on the screen. I went ahead to curve that part into the body like so. So now we are almost done with the drafting of the front pattern. So the next thing I'm going to be doing now is to mark my darts, and to do that I'm going to be dividing my nipple to nipple measurement by 2, and then I'm going to be marking that on the waistline and also on the bust point line. So mine is 3.5 inches, which I marked on the waistline and on the bust point line, and then I connected with a straight ruler. So on that waistline I'm going to be marking half of an inch on both sides of the dart leg, and then to connect the dart back to the upper part I'm going to be coming down by 1 inch from my bust point line, and then I will connect from that point to the dart leg just as I'm showing on the screen. We are basically done with the drafting of this pattern. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to go ahead and cut with my scissors. Note that everything we have been doing since, you can totally do them directly on your fabric. The reason I'm not doing that directly on my fabric is because the markings will not be visible for you guys to see. That is why I'm drafting it on paper first. So when you're drafting your own, if you're using a very good fabric for this, which I advise you should use, go ahead and draft directly on your fabric to save you time. To draft the back pattern, the only difference is just the zipper allowance and the neckline. Okay, so for the zipper allowance, I'm marking 1 inch from the top of my paper down to my half length, and then I'm going to bring back the front pattern, and then I'll place it directly on this new pattern paper. For the back neckline, I'm going to be coming down by 1.5 inches for my neck depth, and then I'll connect it back into the front neck width. So after this, I'm going to basically trace out what I have on the front pattern. Since this blouse we are recreating as a zipper at the back, so we're going to be getting rid of zipper bulge, and to do that, on the waistline, I'm going to be coming in from the zipper allowance by 0.75, and then I will connect it all the way to the top with a slant line. And to also completely get rid of the zipper bulge, which is one thing I've been doing and it has been working for me, I'll also come up by ½ inch from my half length line, go up by ½ inch, and I'll connect it slantly to the side, just like I'm demonstrating on the screen. If you do this for every of your outfits that has a zipper at the back, I promise you it's never going to bulge. I'm just going to cut out all the unwanted parts, and then I will use this paper to cut out my fabric. I'm going ahead to cut out my fabric using the pattern that we drafted earlier, and I also notch the darts point so that it's going to be easy for me when I'm sewing in the darts. So I'm going to start by sewing my dart first of all, and to do that, since I already made the notch, it's going to be very easy for me to know where to sew. But for the length of the dart, I'm just going to refer back to my paper, and then I'm going to measure out the length I have there, which is about 7 inches. So when I'm sewing, I'm going to sew and stop at 7 inches slantly. Okay, and when I'm sewing, I'm not going to back stitch. When I get to the end of my dart, I'm just going to sew it straight. I will leave small thread for me to use to tie it later. So head over to my machine now, and then I'm going to stitch in all the darts on this fabric. The dart leg for the back is different from that of the front. Okay, so for the back, I'm going to be adding 1 inch to the dart length I have at the front, which is now 8 inches for the back. So I'm going to sew it the same way. I would not back stitch. I'm just going to sew and leave small thread I'm going to use to tie a knot later. I'm done sewing all the darts. As you can see, I left just a small thread to make a knot. So to make this knot, I'm just going to tie it like 2 to 3 times in order to secure it. That way your dart is going to come out very flat when you iron it out. So I'm just going to make a knot on all the darts that I just sew, and then I'll show us the next step. So the next thing I'm going to be cutting now is the facing for both the front and the back, and to do that, I went ahead to iron paper stay to a small piece of fabric that is wide enough for my facing. So I'm just going to put this on fold now, and then I'll bring in my front piece. I'll also put it on fold, and then I will carefully align it with the piece of fabric that I just folded, which is below it. So I'm going to align it well, and then I'm going to trace out the neckline and also the shoulder line to some extent, just like I'm demonstrating on the screen. So after tracing it out, this is what I have, and then from that neck depth, I'm going to be coming down by about 7 to 8 inches. I'll make a mark there, and from that side I'm going to be marking 3 inches. Then I will curve it back into the 8 inches mark. So the whole of this is going to be the facing for the front, and then I'll go ahead and cut it out. So after this, remember that the blouse that we are recreating has a slit at the center. So for that slit, I'm going to be coming down from my neck depth by about 4 inches, and then I'm going to slash that place open. On the facing, I'll also do the same thing on the main fabric, and this is what we're going to have. So I'm going to stitch the neckline by ½ inch, and for this slit, I'm going to be stitching it with 1/4 inch, less than ½ inch. All right, then I'm going to cut out the back facing. I'll also do the same thing, put the fabric on fold, and then I'll bring in one piece of the back and I'll trace out the neckline and also part of the shoulder. And after doing this, I'm going to be marking 3 inches all around this facing. Okay, I'm also going to place this on the back pattern, right side facing each other, and then I'm going to be stitching the neckline with half of an inch, and then I'll show us the next thing to do. So I'm done stitching this and I've also given it a good press. Okay, so all the curved corners, just make sure you notch them. That is just the secret to getting it looking perfect like you're seeing on the screen. And the next thing I'm going to be doing now is to join both the front and the back together at the shoulder. So I'm going to place it right side facing each other like this, the back on the front, right side facing each other. I'm going to align it. So what I'm going to be doing now is to use one of the facing to turn in the whole of the shoulder, and then I'm going to stitch it down. Okay, don't worry, I'm going to be showing us how to sew this on the sewing machine. So I'm not going to make this fast so that we can understand how to stitch this for the sake of the beginners, in case you don't know how to neatly sew your shoulders together. So this is how to go about it. Pick one of the shoulder together with the facing, and then use the other facing to turn it in like this. Are you seeing it? Turn it in like this, and then you're going to put it on your presser like this. Make sure the needle is inside it. Raise up your presser foot and then arrange all the pieces together. Arrange them, make sure all of them are on the same line, they are properly arranged. Then you continue to stitch with half of an inch. So I'm just going to do this now for one shoulder. I'll also repeat the same thing on the other shoulder. You can see how I'm carefully doing it, how I'm aligning all the pieces together, and then I'm sewing with half of an inch. So go ahead and do the same thing for yours, and you've just learned how to neatly sew your shoulders together with a facing. And if you're using a lining, you also use this method to make it neat. So in the next thing you're going to do is just to trim off all the excess surrounding that corner. So I'm just going to turn this to the right side now, and then we're going to see what we have. Can you see how neat this is looking already? Can you see? So if you use this method to turn the neckline, I promise you this is what you're going to get. It's just going to look very, very neat like this, whether you're using lining or you're using facing. So after doing that, the next thing is to fold the sleeve opening. Okay, so I'm just going to place them together like this, and then I'm going to fold with half inch, and then I'll fold with another half inch again because I left 1 inch for folding, and I'm going to stitch all the way down. So after doing that, the next thing is to sew the sides together. So I'm going to put them right side facing each other like this. You can see the way I'm aligning it all the way from the sleeve opening down to the half length. So I'm going to sew with 1 inch, which is the allowance I gave. So if you gave more than 1 inch allowance, go ahead and stitch with that allowance. So I gave 1 inch allowance, which is why I am stitching with 1 inch. So when you are done sewing, go ahead and notch all the curved corners so that it can relax well. And after everything, this is what we have. I've gone ahead to notch, and I've also given it a very good press. So this is what the upper part is looking like. So the next thing we're going to do now is to attach the peplum. And to do that, what I'm going to do is determine my top length. For me, I'm using a top length of 26 inches, and if I subtract half length from that 26 inches, I'll be left with 10 inches. So which means the length of my peplum is 10 inches, and to that length I'm going to be adding 1 inch for joining allowance to the bodies, and also 1 inch for folding the lower part, which makes a total of 2 inches allowance plus my length, which is 10 inches. So I have a total of 12 inches. And for how long my peplum is, I have something about 70 inches for the front peplum, which is like 2 yards. And then for the back peplum, I also have the same 70 inches, but for the back I'm going to be cutting it into 2, which will leave me with 1 inch each for the back. So to attach the peplum, I'm going to bring in my half bodies like so, and then I'm going to place them together to get the center part, and I'm going to be making a notch at that center. I'll also bring in my front peplum, I'll fold it into 2, and I will also get the center. So after getting the center, I'm going to place them right side facing each other, the peplum and the main bodies like this, and then I'm going to stitch from that center all the way to the side seam with 1 inch. When I'm done doing that, I'll also sew the other side from the center to the side seam with 1 inch. Stop at the side seam, do not pass the side seam. After joining the front peplum, this is what it looks like. As you can see, I stopped before the stitch at the side. Can you see it? So I'm bringing it closer just so you guys see where to stop your own. So now the next thing is to fix the back peplum, and to do that I'm going to start stitching from the zipper allowance. Okay, I'm going to place them right side facing each other and stitch from the zipper allowance all the way to the side seam by 1 inch. I'm also going to repeat the same thing on the other side. So I'm done joining all the peplum to the half length, and I also noticed that the back peplum was kind of longer than the front peplum. In case you have something like this, do not panic, just go ahead and align both the front and the back together and then cut it to the same length, which is exactly what I did here. Okay, so after this, what we're going to do now is to fold all the rough edges with 1 inch, which is the allowance that we left. So you're going to fold ½ inch twice and stitch that all around the rough edges. I'm going to head over to my sewing machine now, and then I'm going to do just that. And after finishing all the rough edges by folding it in twice with ½ inch, I'm also going to attach my zipper to the back, and then I'll show us the end result. So this is what the top looks like after finishing up all the rough edges and installing my zipper, and I also gave it a very good press. As you can see, this came out lovely. The only thing I wish I could have done differently was my choice of fabric. I could have used a more structured fabric and not this very light one, so that it's going to give the exact same feel the actual one is giving. So if you are creating yours, please use a strong fabric, a medium weight fabric. Yes, do not use any soft fabric, it's not going to come out nice. Okay, so this is the end of the tutorial. If you enjoyed this tutorial and you gain a lot from this tutorial, kindly like this video, subscribe to my channel if you have not subscribed, and turn on your post notification bell so that when I post the next video, you're going to be the first to be notified. Thank you so much for always supporting and watching my video. I will see you guys in my next one.